All right. I always like this first smile. All right. There we go. Maybe that was too fast. Here, we'll both go real slow.
Okay.
Okay. So that's the fun part about doing this live. Everybody got to see behind the scenes for how these come together. So I'm aligning my screen. I got to look at this screen. I got to get them just right. That way I can follow questions as they come in from folks. I've become, in this age of COVID, a video producer,
Yeah.
video
Well, we all have to be
editor,
resilient and adjust, right?
interviewer, the whole 9 yards. But the whole purpose of these interviews is to take this uncertain time we live in, with all the chaos and disruption that's going on, what I would normally be doing, like it was in the military context and combat, when I was in the middle of the operations center and bullets are flying and things are going to helicopters and tanks, and I'm trying to get a read of what's going on, I'd be on the radio, or I'd be calling people in face to face, or going out to visit them. Same thing in this context, but it was also the same thing in business. As a startup, trying to get your company off the ground, trying to figure out new ideas, talking to everybody that's already been there, done that, talking to experts, talking to people. So that's what these co-videos are, is these are the conversations I would be having anyway in this time of chaos and uncertainty. And then it dawned on me after about the fourth or fifth conversation, I was like, I think other people should have heard what you just said. And then I'm like, well, wait a minute. I just need to take Zoom,
pull this together.
Yeah, right on the Facebook Live. So that was the long introduction, because I know you've been busy and trying to figure out what it is that I'm doing. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm joined by Dr. Michael Weber, who has many titles. My favorite one that I am honored to call him is friend. And just by way of a backstory, when I got out of Iraq in 2007, 2008, I was furious about how badly the DOD was managing the energy dependence on old energy systems. And I knew I'd be leaving the Pentagon in 2011-ish timeframe, after a couple of years in the Pentagon. And I wanted to know who in Austin, Texas was doing something in the world of energy, national security, energy policy. And I Googled in all those keywords, Austin, Texas, and boom, Michael, your name not only came up, but more importantly, I just cold called you. And you're like, yeah, as a matter of fact, I'm going to be in DC before you move down here. You brought your grad students. We had lunch at Old Ebbets. It was dinner at Old Ebbets across from the White House. And you officially, I think, have the title of being the person I've known longest in Austin, because I knew you before I got to Austin. So with that introduction, let me just tell you how cool it is to be here with you today. First of all, let me ask, family safe, worries, concerns, where is everybody? I know, Julian, you've got people all over the world, literally and figuratively. How is everybody?
Everything's good. Good to be in touch with you after a decade of friendship now. So I think that's fantastic. And I'm proud to have that title as longest known friend in Austin. So that's a special
There you go.
spot. We're good. So Julia and I and our youngest, Maverick, our 14-year-old, we were in Paris. We were in France until—
And that's where you were working.
Yeah, working there until 20 days ago. So it was just about 3 weeks ago that we left France. We saw what was happening in Italy. We knew it was coming to France, and we realized it was going to go global. So we had to make a choice. Do we want to be stranded in Texas close to family, or stranded in France? We chose to be stranded close to family. So we bought same day one-way tickets, left on a couple hours notice, grabbed a bag of our essential clothes and passports and money, and left. In fact, our house in France probably looks frozen in time, like Chernobyl or something, where we'll go back and everything is exactly where we left it.
Yeah.
We got up and out to get
here. A book here, an empty coffee cup there, a pair of socks next to shoes there.
Yeah, dirty clothes in the corner and everything. So it's kind of frozen in time moment in Paris, because we knew we had to move quickly, because things were accelerating there, just as they are now in the United States. So Julie and I, our youngest, are here. We were hotel refugees for 2 weeks. Now we're living in a friend's house, and we hope to be in our house in a couple of weeks. Our middle child is living in our house with a family who's renting it, and they're moving out because they're remodeling. They'll move out into their house. And then our daughter, our oldest, she's a junior at UT. She's living in her apartment, but all 5 of us will be in the same house probably within a week or so. So we're kind of scattered, but we're scattered in Austin so far. But we're all healthy. We're all good. And so far, so good.
Okay, well, that's always the first thing I want to do. And then admin wise, for the fact that we do this live, for those that catch it in the afternoon or evening, whenever it happens to be when our guests are available, I also have questions that come back in. Ashley Waymeyer, a friend of mine I went to West Point with, she thinks it's amazing that you just picked up the family and moved that fast. So we're going to get into a lot of topics, water and energy. But I remember when the president made the announcement about shutting down access to Europe, What was that like? Were you still there? You had family there? What happened?
This was tense. So we'd already had discussions. We had already decided to come to Texas to ride out the pandemic close to family, because I have a mother who's at risk in town, and my wife's mother is in small town Texas, not too far away. She's at risk. So we wanted to get to Texas to be close to the family. So it was Wednesday. This was March 12th. We bought tickets for Saturday. Like one-way tickets, and one-way tickets are never cheap. We bought them on short notice. We got to get home on Saturday. So it's Wednesday night, like at 8 or 9 p.m. Paris time.
Yeah.
We go to bed. We get a call at 2:30 a.m. Thursday, March 12th, 2:30 a.m. Paris time, which is 8:30 p.m. East Coast time at the time, or Central time. President Trump had just given his big speech where he said he was going to shut down travel to Europe and close the borders.
Yep.
So our daughter called us, woke us up, said, well, President Trump's closing the borders. You better get moving, or, I just want you to know. So we snapped out of bed at 2:30. I got on the phone with the airline to buy same day tickets for that day. We already had one-way tickets for Saturday. My wife's waking her son up, packing clothes, and by 4:15 a.m. we're on the way to the airport. So we had an hour and 45 minutes to make a decision, get out of bed, get dressed, pack our stuff, and leave. And we had to throw away the perishable food, turn off the radiators, that kind of thing, and go.
Wow.
Now, we got to the airport by 5 a.m. for a 7 a.m. flight. And then we found out that President Trump misstated his own policies. He actually wasn't shutting down travel and all things. It was just for foreign nationals. It wasn't for American citizens. There was waiting at home. So it was a misinterpretation and a misstatement of what his policies were. In the end, it's fine because we beat the rush. You probably saw some of the news reports days later with 6,000 people trapped in the International Rivals Hall in Chicago, that kind of thing. We had a much easier thing. We weren't surrounded by a bunch of people who were infected. We've survived the 14-day quarantine with no sickness, so we probably had an easier time. But it was a weird suddenness, which was, even though we had already decided to make the trip to Texas, we had to accelerate that decision by several days on very short notice. Yep. And even though we have options, we have money, we have an easy existence in many ways, it was still stressful.
Yeah.
And I was imagining, what if you're an actual refugee, not this sort of refugee with multiple options the way we were, where you don't know where you're going, you don't have options, bombs are falling on your head, and you have other things. If it was stressful for us in what was really a cushy situation compared to the Syrians fleeing by the millions or whatever, I was like, okay, this is stressful. And it's stressful because you don't know where you're going to go, don't know when you're going to go back, and you don't know what your life is like. We have a son in school. What are we going to do? So he's been doing school in Paris remotely from Texas, and I've been working remotely for Paris from Texas. Since then, the entire country of France has gone on lockdown along with the rest of Europe. Yep. So the entire company I work for, NG, the entire company is teleworking now. So it doesn't really matter that I'm in Texas as opposed to Paris, whatever.
Yep.
But it was a sudden series of decisions. It's a sign that even with a lot of warning, it still caught people off guard. There's a lot of confusion about the policies were, confusion at the top. We got caught up in that. It became expensive to buy a bunch of different one-way tickets. Airlines have been very gracious to give us our money back, by the way. Hotels work with us. So a lot of big companies that have a lot to lose have been very gracious, but it was stressful to get out.
Wow. Well, that's the human interest. I try to make these videos part human interest, part actionable takeaways. Yeah. And I'm sorry you and your family had to go through that, but it's important for people to understand. But it provides for a nice segue. So here's the segue. Maybe I'm going to go too round and about in this, but you mentioned the fact that, you had the means and the resources to be able to make that sudden departure from your home, like a refugee fleeing a combat zone in which bombs are falling. So just as that caused you to think about those in situations where maybe you wouldn't have in that way been able to empathize or sympathize, so too are people realizing not only are frontline healthcare workers being stretched to the limits and just how hard that must be, but there's other professions that I hope, and we'll get to your expertise in a second, I hope there's other industries that people appreciate. For instance, teachers. I think when people spend as much time at home with their, especially K through 12, as they're going to be, especially elementary over the next couple of weeks or months as it goes farther, hopefully folks will reimagine the role that teachers play in society. And if that's a silver lining that comes out of that, I think that's a good thing that comes out.
I mean, so let's talk about teachers. Of course, there are many other essential services to society, but teachers are important. And I'm a college teacher, which is the least important, least relevant by some view of it. But my sister is an elementary school teacher, and my sister-in-law is an elementary school teacher or middle school teacher, and my mother-in-law is a retired middle school teacher. So we see it from the retirees in the family and from the people on the front lines of teaching. And they had developed a way and experience of teaching for decades with direct instruction in the classroom. And on 2 weeks' notice, are having to learn how to do it online, which is not trivial. My sister is an art teacher. She works with her hands. She's not a digital art teacher. And so
Yeah.
figuring out the tools and equipment is hard, even if you have a lot of experience. If you don't have experience, it's very stressful. So teachers are really critical, and they're having to be resilient and adjust on the fly. The other thing about teachers is, in addition to raising our future leaders and adding value to society in that way, there's a very important function they play from a child care perspective that we don't appreciate, which is our economy depends on our children having a place to go so that the parents can work. And maybe this is a bad design of society, but this is the design of society nevertheless. And so when all of a sudden 100 million school children, or however many school children it is we have in the United States, can't go to school, must be home, and must need oversight from their parents, it means one or more of the parents can't work. And even if the parents have jobs that they would like to work on, they can't necessarily do them from home because the kids are there. I see this with my team. I have hundreds of researchers who work with me in Paris and Belgium, and some of them have multiple kids. They can't do their research from home so easily.
Yeah.
So there's a very important intellectual philosophical function teachers play raising our next generation, but there's also a very practical function the school plays, which is it's a place for our kids to go so that the parents can do something else. And
well,
we're feeling that right now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously invited you on as an energy expert, but I think it's neat that we've gone on this tangent, because if those people you referred to, your colleagues and others, are distracted in a way that they normally wouldn't be if their kids were outside the home during school, it's going to have a severe impact on their ability to be a part of the workforce, which is a webinar I just hosted right before I got on the line with you, with folks across the country talking about what is the future workforce. But one of the neat things that comes out of this perhaps is that now employees are going to be able to go to their employers and say, look, we were all forced to work in a remote way, or many people were. Can I now renegotiate my workflow? Can I be 2 days in the office and 3 days at home? And maybe there's a silver lining that comes out of this in that regard.
I suspect. So I think that this pandemic is going to be deeper and longer than most people admit. I don't think this is something that comes through in a few weeks and we snap back to where we were. It takes more than a few weeks. And I don't think we snap back to the same place. I'm not sure we snap back. I think we slowly come back to a new normal, and the new normal will have a variety of differences. And I'm hopeful that the new normal has many positive attributes that we're experiencing now. It's very frustrating to be trapped at home, but it's actually very nice to be at home too. So for many people who are gone too much, it's a chance to be together with our families. And we might learn that we can do our jobs effectively from home several days a week. We might still need to be in the office to meet with our teams, but perhaps companies will be more open to teleworking in the future after the pandemic than before. And perhaps the employees will seek it out more because it means we can avoid the commute and we can spend more time with the family. We can work flexibly. We can get other things done. We don't necessarily have to wear pants. We can just wear a nice top and shave, that kind of thing. I saw there's a
I've got pants on today, and full disclosure.
I am fully pantsed. Yeah, I'm fully clothed top to bottom. So I'm glad to know you are as well. But I think I saw some report that Walmart's selling many more tops than bottoms. So people are working from home, they're buying more shirts. So I'm hopeful that one of the things we come back from this whole episode, this duration, which will be many months, will be more tolerance and appreciation for telework and flexible work, along with stronger safety nets, along with more appreciation for scientists, along with more collaboration among layers of government. But I think this idea that we don't all have to be in the office 8 to 5, I think that idea might feel very aged.
Yes. So in fact, I just added that comment in the section, more appreciation for scientists. So let's get into that area. You are a water and energy expert. Power Trip, your latest book. Before that, Thirst for Power.
Thirst for Power. Absolutely. Yeah.
It is this nexus between access to water that gives us access to energy and vice versa. And because you have made me so aware of it, because I've been trying to follow in your footsteps to figure out energy policy, national energy security policy. Just last fall at West Point, you and I joined Sharon Burke in an amazing discussion with the cadets at West Point. In fact, I see you're wearing.
I'm wearing my West Point half vest, half zip now. Yeah.
Go Army, beat Navy. I just want to say that right now. But what we were talking about then ended talking about the vulnerability of our grid and vulnerability of our energy infrastructure. So as I'm now watching worldwide reports about COVID and shutting down so much of our economy, I'm very surprised that not enough people are talking about the resiliency of our energy infrastructure. And oh, did I just lose you?
I'm here.
Oh, good. Okay. No, my
I'm here.
mail just popped up.
Okay.
Yeah. But what's so fascinating is not enough people are talking about until I saw your article on LinkedIn. So I'll briefly summarize my favorite takeaways and then you take it deeper with what I may have missed. But first of all,
Okay.
they're the unsung heroes, those that work in the utility industry, not just water and natural gas and electricity, but the entire industry are keeping our lights on. They're allowing our critical
Letting
infrastructure
us speak.
to
Yeah.
communicate. But then the other thing that you highlighted that I thought was fascinating was kind of this call to arms that says, look, folks, we take it for granted. We only notice it when it doesn't work, and not enough young people coming out of school, both trades and skills and the higher tech training, are going into the utility industry. Those are my two biggest takeaways from your article. But really, it goes to say we're not going to get through this stay at home and shelter in place if we don't have the electricity and the water and the natural gas. And you, sir, on LinkedIn with that post, I think it was what, ASME Journal?
Yeah. So I write a monthly essay for Mechanical Engineering Magazine, which is published by ASME. ASME is the American Society for Mechanical Engineers. That's my professional society. So I write for them regularly and wrote a post. I think it's actually for the May issue on the heroes of our utility sector that they pre-published because it's so relevant to today.
Oh, good.
The situation we have today, I call it a soft apocalypse, where it's an apocalypse, but we're
apocalypse.
a soft apocalypse because we are.
Can I hashtag that and credit you with it? I'm going to say soft.
Absolutely. Soft apocalypse. It's harder to spell than you think, but it's a situation where we have an apocalyptic scenario unfolding with a risk of death and suffering, a large scale economic slowdown, many events happening at once, many of which are negative. Yet lights are on, water's flowing, food supply chains for the most part are intact. So it's a comfortable apocalypse mixed with fear and uncertainty.
I have to interrupt on that point. I saw a fabulous meme. A buddy of mine, Paul Larger out in Colorado, put it up, and it basically says, look, folks, our grandparents were asked to pick up and fight overseas in the Pacific and European theaters. You're being asked to sit home and watch TV. Larry David had a great public service announcement out in California on a similar subject. So yes, it's this slow rolling emergency with electricity and air conditioning and water for now.
And creature comforts of home, right? So we have the video games and the entertainment and other things. So that's because the utility sector is working. They're essential personnel. And this is one thing I had to admit to myself because the company I work at in Paris while I'm on leave from the university, Engie, is a huge electric and gas utility, one of the largest energy companies in the world. They said all non-essential personnel go home. So I went home. I'm not essential. A lot of us aren't essential. Who's essential? It's usually the people who run the power plants and the water treatment plants. They're essential. Even the CEO went home to work. CEO is not essential. And I think that's a good reminder for all of us. There's some humility there that the executives aren't essential. The people that run the system, they are essential, and they keep the lights on for all of us.
Yeah, in the Army, the similar parallel to that would be the NCOs, the soldiers and the sergeants that do all the work would also claim that the officers are certainly not members of the key and essential staff.
Yeah.
But to this point, though, we take it for granted. Give folks an idea of how big it is, how vast it is, how much of a ship, if you will, that this is in motion, and give them some either hope or concern about risk or susceptibility to further disruption down the road.
So I think that there's good news and bad news. The good news is the utility sector is resilient. They do contingency planning. The utility sector does a contingency planning for things like lightning strikes and hurricanes and terrorist attacks. Usually it's a physical problem that they're dealing with. And do we have enough spare capacity in the system? And do we have the backup plans? So in my company, we have contingency plans where I had identified my two backups in case I'm incapacitated because I'm sick. And my two backups.
You're talking about people that are your backups.
Yes. And then my two backups had to identify their two backups. So this went many layers deep on the people side. We also do it on the physical capacity side with, do we have spare pipeline capacity? Do we have spare power plant capacity? Do we have supply chains that are still going to move the fuels back and forth? So there's a lot of contingency planning goes in. For the most part, it's very resilient. I'm very impressed, and we have a lot to learn from the utility sector. So the good news is it's robust. You and I are having a conversation. People might even be listening. We have all these other comforts of home. So this is good news. The bad news is, as resilient as that system is, it is more fragile than we like to admit because there are risks from cybersecurity attacks, physical attacks, or just failure of equipment, like happened in California, where one hook from 100 years ago broke, a wire fell, sparked a fire, people died, billions of dollars of damage done. So the system is very robust, yet small things that can happen can trigger a widespread event. So we need to constantly reinvest and make it smarter and better and tougher and hardened and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of good news, but a little bad news. And of course, probably right now we're focused on other things like the pandemic rather than reinvesting in the maintenance of the infrastructure. But it's hard to fight the pandemic if you don't have ventilators, which require electricity, or you don't have lights for the doctors or the other equipment, or the plastics you need, which are made from petrochemicals. So the energy sector and the utility sector underpins our ability to deal with the medical crisis at the same time.
Yeah, I'm capturing that point that ventilators require electricity.
Yeah.
So I always try to make these about actionable takeaways, things that people can do themselves or learn. Let me make sure I spell electricity right. That'd be terrible to spell it wrong in front of Michael Weber. So, okay, you're sitting at your house, you're not on the front line. And I define three groups really. There are the front line, those that they themselves that are sick, and the caregivers and the healthcare professionals that are trying to meet that immediate cause and future need. Second are those people that are quite literally now out of work. They've been furloughed, they've been laid off. They're in a world of hurt from a financial standpoint and all the stress that comes with it. Then there's that third group, the ones where I think I can help the most, focus on those small businesses, groups, organizations, nonprofits that are just trying to move forward through the day and keep calm and carry on. What can they be doing, since they're not in those first two categories, to make sure that the grid stays resilient? What are the things that they can do, maybe that they hadn't thought of, that contribute to putting less of a stress on the system?
I think the same things we can always do, which are conservation, and turn off the lights you don't need them, don't flush the toilet if you don't need to, don't let the faucet run. Conservation still matters because it will help the system avoid any peak demands and that kind of thing. So we need to pay attention to that. I think for the most part, we also should, if we can, reach out to people we know. I'm worried about the human infrastructure and keeping those relationships intact, because sometimes relationships are not as resilient as we want them to be. I'm more concerned about that than the physical infrastructure for this type of event. The pandemic is really a strain of our social fabric, not so much a strain on our physical fabric. Whereas a war or a terrorist attack might be a strain on both. So this is different. And so I think we need to do what we can to support our utility workers. I actually would suggest for students wondering what their career is, they should look at the utility sector as a place to go work. It's more high tech and important than a lot of people realize. They sometimes want to go to flashier companies that have faster growth. The utility sector's work is purposeful. It uses machine learning, artificial intelligence, computers and sensors and all the cool things you want, and is critical to society. And then we need to, so when you think about that and train for that and go for that, and I'm proud to work at a major utility, by the way, as Chief Science and Technology Officer. I think it's a great place to go. And then I think we need to do what we can, these kind of conversations with each other, with our friends. I've got a checklist of people I call in on, family, friends, others I haven't spoken to in years, make sure they're all right and they have what they need. And so I think we need to be each other's social infrastructure at the same time the utility sector takes care of the physical part.
Well, that is a perfect segue as we wrap it up here, because I like to keep these around 20 minutes. As I said recently in a post, that news is coming at us so fast, the conditions are changing so rapidly that an article you may have read 2 or even 3 weeks ago often doesn't even apply in terms of the scope of what we're dealing with. And I humorously said the other day that blogs are so 2019 because by the time you get around to finding them and reading them, that's why I'm trying to push all this content that I can live, both here in Facebook and over on LinkedIn. And then I capture it all in Medium. But of all those lessons learned and captured, the best always come from the guests and my friends and colleagues that I'm interviewing. So you mentioned the need to keep that social fabric stitched together. What else that is out there that you all are doing as a family, or you've seen someone else do, or maybe colleagues at work, like your 2-down business continuity plan? What do you recommend that you make sure everybody's doing that is working for you all?
So on my team, which is a research team, we're an energy research team. We've been asking the question, what can we do to help with the medical crisis? The medical crisis is outside our core competence. We're an energy company. But it turns out we've got a lot of good engineers, and we know how to operate motors and cut metal and bend metal and make different things. So we have a prototype of a ventilator design that we're testing right now, and we might be able to make hundreds or thousands of them next week. So we energy engineers can make ventilators just as a humanitarian thing through the company. We're also a company that builds things, and we've built hospitals, and we operate the facilities of hospitals like a Harvard Medical School and things like that. What can we do to repurpose hospitals so they're more suitable for a pandemic? You have these ICUs, and you also have surgery rooms. Surgery rooms, no air flows in because they don't want to bring infection in, so air flows out. Whereas ICU or infectious centers are the other way around. They don't want the infectious disease to get out. Can you flip the ventilation around, change it around? Can we build temporary hospitals? Can we convert hotels or hostels into hospitals? So a lot of things we're thinking of, even as an energy company, we can help. And I think all of us should brainstorm, like, what can we do to help? And sometimes the best thing to do to help is just take care of yourself and your family. That's plenty. Not all of us have to save the world. Save yourself, save your family, and then look for ways you contribute after that. But take care of your family first, because if your family doesn't need help, that is helpful for the system, actually.
That's right. In fact, Griffin just got on and said, "Go Weber Energy Group." Nice little shout out there from the crowd.
Thanks, Griffin. Yeah.
In fact, those were really the nature of the first videos that I started to do 11 interviews ago, or whatever it is now.
It felt like a decade ago, right?
Seems, yeah, in these COVID times. Because it really goes back to this point where, and I learned this in the military and it applies well in business and all my other endeavors, you need to either lead, follow, or get out of the way. Yeah. And what you just described there was so fantastic, which is we are really giving a lot of people a free pass. All we're asking you to do is just have Netflix marathons on end. If you get through all the English speaking movies, for heaven's sake, start with the foreign films. But whatever you do, don't be an idiot and go out there and either put yourself at risk or put others at risk, because then when you add to the strain of the medical system, I mean, this is really one of the easiest go home and do nothing moments. And to think about all the people who complain all day long, I don't want to be at work or school, I want to get home. Well, here's your chance. And yet we still see stories of them going out, which drives me crazy.
I mean, I think not being a contributor to the problem means you're part of the solution. So I think that's something we should all do. And it's a time for us to rebuild those relationships with our spouses and kids. So I think that's great.
Yeah. Okay. So I just want to end on the note that we began with, which is to keep in mind those three layers. The first line, front line, is those that are sick and those that are trying to help them get well. Our hearts and our minds, and like you said, your skills and your talents with the ventilator work, that's fabulous, are going to them. Then that second tier of those people that are immediately out of work, that are needing to pay bills. Today is April 1st when we film this live. They have real stress, real concerns. It's that third layer that I'm trying to help with these videos. Pass along. If you think of something later on, Michael, that you didn't mention, or a link that you want to make sure that the readers know or see, or the viewers see, this will be on Facebook, and then I'm going to transfer it later on today over to LinkedIn. Anything else that I didn't ask you or say that you want to get out while we're still live with people watching?
I think that the last thing I say is this is severe, it's scary, it's uncertain, but we'll get through it. And we have to remember that we'll get through it. We've gotten through difficult things before, we will again, but it might be uncertain for a while. We just got to hang in there.
Yep. And so many of my friends that are combat vets, and then a lot of us that move from the chaos of combat and managing and trying to make that as orderly as possible, even though you can't control it because the enemy, like COVID, always has a vote. And then a lot of us moved into business. And so, we're making payroll, and we're, hiring and firing and doing all the things that you have to do in a company. So we've seen the stress of the chaos of combat and the stress of startups. And so I think that we're in a unique opportunity to kind of lock arms, as we like to say, to help folks through this situation. And if these videos help or anything else helps, I'm glad we did it. So Michael, thank you for being a part of this today. Tell Julie and the kids I said hello. I hope everybody gets under one roof, back under your roof soon, but it was kind enough to let the renters stay in there for a while and not
absolutely
double that up. All right.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to see you, Joseph. Take care.
Take care, Michael. Take care.
Bye.